it's a privilege to be in this medium. You know, telling stories, my God, we're storytellers, and that's all we do is go around looking for stories and tell them. You know, I was very fortunate in the time. I had just finished doing Blade Runner and Wolfen, and had done a piece called The Ballad of Gregorio Cortez for PBS, and for the American Playhouse series. The very first, matter of fact, it was the first American Playhouse film made, and very successful. And but the characters, and Zoot Suit, of course, I'd done the play and the movie, and so the year was 1984. So, and I was walking around with The Ballad of Gregorio Cortez. We were screening it in different parts of the country. It had played on television, and I took it out and I released it as a major motion picture. And it was doing very well, and I was busy working. So when Michael Mann called me and asked me to be part of Miami Vice, I really didn't have the time nor the energy to really get involved. And he made me an offer that was extraordinary. And it was an offer that, when I looked at it, they were offering me, I think, 18 shows, because they had already done 3, and plus the pilot. They had done the pilot and 3 shows. And so this was going to be the 18th show. It was 22 hours during the series during that time. So I said I couldn't do it, but they were offering me more money than my father had made in his lifetime. That's a lot of money. And I didn't have any money. I was walking around, driving my Volkswagen, 1969 Volkswagen, and living in a $150 a month rent. I owned a house at that time, and my payment was $150 a month. So you can imagine how incredible, great times they were. And they were. It was really a lot of fun. But anyway, he made me an offer, and I said no, I couldn't do it for a couple of reasons. I said, basically, I have creative control of my characters, and I understand that that's, kind of hard to get in television, especially in episodic TV, and that's why I didn't go with Stephen Boettcher when Boettcher asked me to be part of Hill Street Blues, or when he had NYPD Blue. I couldn't work on. I could go there, and like I said to Michael, I said, I can be with you if you want a reoccurring role. That's a different story. But to sign a 7-year contract with NBC without creative control of my character and a non-exclusive contract is what I need, because I have jobs that I'm doing right now, and they don't do those kind of deals. So thank you very much. And I hung up the phone, and of course my wife flipped out. And she says, "You're crazy." And I said, "Yeah, I might be crazy, but I really do believe that I really need that kind of a situation, and because of the work that we're doing." And he called me back about 5 minutes later, and he raised the price. I said, "Holy mackerel." I said, "Michael, I can't." It's incredible, But what are you going to be doing next year? And he says, "Well, I'm going to be doing the show." I go, "Yeah, but are you doing anything else?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm doing Manhunter next year." The year was 1984. Going into 85, he was going to do Manhunter. And I said, "Well, there you go. You're going to go off and do your movies. I get stuck on the television show. I have films that I'm working on that I have to do, so I can't, Michael. I really wish I could, but I need a non-exclusive contract, And plus, my creative control of my characters, you don't want to give that up. I mean, Boettcher wouldn't give it up. Nobody would give it up. I understand that you guys have your feeling." And so he says, and I hung up. And by this time, my family was leaving me alone. And then we ended up coming back, and he called me about 10 minutes later. And he says, and he raised the price again. And I said to myself, gosh, if I only knew that all I had to do was say no, and the price would keep going up. I said, wow, that's a really good thing to know. But I said, look, Michael, I really wish I could. I really do. I mean, this is very enticing. But I can't. I cannot do this. Without creative control of my characters, I'm out there. I'll be, wondering what I'm going to do next, and that's not how I like to work. I like to know what I'm going to do next. I like to have some decisions made. And so I said no. And he called up a 4th time about 10 minutes later. So, this is taking about an hour and a half. And I didn't realize that he needed me there that night. I had to fly out on the red eye to be in front of camera at, 7 o'clock in the morning. I get in at like 6. 5:36, and I was going to be, they needed me. I didn't know that at that time. The fourth call came in, and he says, well, you got it. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, you got creative control, and you got a non-exclusive contract. You just got to give me, 60 days advance notice when you want to go and do your thing, and that'll give me the ability to write around you. I said, well, it's fair. I said, and I'll take the last offer. And so I went to work that night. I flew in and we got into doing Miami Vice. But if you notice, the character was kind of unusual. It was not the normal character. It was, and they couldn't have written a character like that. It was not. I mean, the very first day I got there, I looked at I had been watching they sent me the pilot and the 3 episodes, and I saw that they had killed the lieutenant. And I later found out they killed Gregory Sierra, and Gregory had wanted off the show because he couldn't take the relationship between him and Don Johnson and Philip Michael Thomas, so he just pulled out. He said, I want off, kill me quick. So sure enough, they killed him, and it really brought a different angle to the show. But they had to refill the spot, and they were in production, so they had to get somebody there quickly. And so when Michael called me, and I didn't know Michael at the time, I had seen his work. The Thief was just brilliant, and it was a brilliant piece of work, and the guy was just incredibly gifted. And I just, so I was very impressed that he'd called me. I knew nothing about the show. But I saw the show, and it looked like Starsky and Hutch. Not that there's anything wrong with Starsky and Hutch. It's just that what I mean by that is that it had the 2 characters, the lead characters, were dismissing everyone. They started to dismiss, at the time when I saw it, they had dismissed the chief of police, the governor of the state, the head of the FBI, and, not disrespectfully, but it was the kind of thing where they'd be talking to this person, then they'd look at each other and kind of like have this little look, and then they'd come back and talk to that person. And right there you knew, oh, they have something that they've got planned that they're not saying to this person. And so the person was rendered dismissed. They had done it to their lieutenant. They had done it to everybody. So they were like doing what was normal then on television and was normal. And I said, I can't do this for 4 or 5 years. I mean, this is not my idea of a good time to be in a show where you're always talking to the guys in sincerity and you're really trying to get across, and the whole show, everybody in the show knows that they're just going to dismiss you. So I said, what the hell can I do? And so I did it. And the very first scene that I did, I was supposed to say one thing, and when Philip Michael Thomas gets into my face, in the scene where by the river's edge, and Crockett loses his girlfriend, high school girlfriend, sweetheart. He comes up into me, and I say, and I look at him and I say, I'm supposed to say one thing, and I say, don't ever come up into my face like this again, detective. And that's not written. It was not written. Okay, so I say that, and he's standing right in front of me, and now he's stuck because he wasn't expecting that. He was, basically he wanted me to say the lines on the paper. But Don grabs him and moves him away. That would cut, and the director says, "I like that. That was good. That was good. I like that. Thank you." I said. So we went. That was it. One take, and that was it. I am. I'm trying to think back quickly. I mean, in that position in a show of that caliber, I mean, basically Miami Vice became one of the fundamental shows of the 80s, and it was because of the editing and the music and all the color and everything and the way they shot it. And Thomas Carter did a wonderful job on the pilot. And I must say that I know that there were other Latinos, not very many, that had been on regulars on television. But maybe you're right in respects of what position I held at that time as being one of the lieutenants, a high-ranking person. I wasn't the gardener, and I wasn't the the janitor, and I wasn't playing one of the bad guys, you know. And maybe I will have to say that it's probably, you're probably right. I can't think of anyone before me. I didn't know at the time that these things were happening. But it was, and it's still that way. I mean, it hasn't changed much. I mean, we have Jimmy Smits, and we've had Gregory Sierra. Of course, he was before I was, so you know, he was there. And I mean, the guy's a fantastic artist. He's a great actor. At the beginning, I was just lucky to work, and I really was respectful. I'd done theater. I started doing theater in 1964, and I was doing off LA theater, which is really far off Broadway, and I did it for, you know, up until 1981. That's all I did was theater, and I would, you know, sprinkle it with some TV. I had very few roles, but I was starting to gain some presence. The very first time I did a Kojak was the first time I got my SAG card, actually, in a Kojak, because of David Friedkin, who was a great writer, and he was a creator of I Spy, and he was directing me in Kojak, and I was a friend of his and his family's, and I'd known him for quite a while. So he brought me in, and he actually, that was the scene. Oh, I take that back. That was the first television program that I did. And but I had done, before that, I had done one movie where I got my SAG card, and that was Aloha, Bobby and Rose. But that was a feature. But the very first television program was, I think, Kojak. It's not that far ago. That's not that long ago, you know. So I'd been, it was in the early 70s, 70, 71, something like that. And then, you know, there was times when I had to play, I played the bad guy for a while because of the way I look. Automatically, they were pushing me into those roles. And then, but I didn't do them for long. I started to immediately not take roles, you know, that were putting me into the position of playing the bad guy. And because I was doing theater, so I really didn't need to do television. And not that I was making any money doing theater, I wasn't. But then I didn't have a very high overhead, and I could deliver my furniture during the day, and because I was delivering furniture. I used to be a rock and roll singer. I was a rock and roll singer from 1960 through 1970, about 74. I sang a lot of rock and roll. It was great. And during the 60s, and so I was working, doing rock and roll, and then when I quit rock and roll and I started going deeper into theater and film and television, I ended up having a antique delivery job that I built for myself. It was my own. So I had my own time frame that I could work. And it became life-sustaining. It was very good. I was very happy with the kind of relationship I had with my work and my art. And then when, so I could say no to television shows and to things that I really didn't think should be doing, because they weren't going to enhance me in any way artistically, and either as learning something new or, you know, getting an opportunity to do more of something, because I was getting stereotyped. It was just, boom, you know, negative characters. And so I said, no, it's not going to work. So I ended up starting to pick my work. And of course, after Zoot Suit, it was all over. 1978, I did a play called Zoot Suit, and just shot me into international recognition that was very well received throughout the world. And from there, and then right from there, I went into Wolfen with Albert Finney, and I was starring opposite Albert. And Albert had just finished doing Tom Jones and won great critical acclamation for it. And so we were both like riding very strong wave. And then right after that, all that time I was doing the El Pachuco and Zoot Suit. I'd gone to Broadway, and we were the very first actors, Latino actor. I led the very first Latino play dealing with Latino themes, you know, on Broadway, in the history of Broadway. It's like, you know, Miami Vice was truly a centerpiece of Latino art, because it had in many ways, constructed a new look for Latinos, just like, you know, what Desi Arnaz did in the 50s when he did the I Love Lucy show. And he was the creator and executive producer of the show and created the 3-camera event and Desilu Studios. So they were really, he was a great pioneer. During that period of time, Anthony Quinn, of course, had done features, and he had done some, I wonder if he'd done Requiem on TV yet. No, that was in the 60s, I think, when he did that, Requiem for a Heavyweight. Him and Jack Palance did it. And I think he did it, either he did it on TV or well, of course, you got to remember television. It was quite interesting. Television used to play a lot of, would play the movies. After they got done in the movies, they would be played on television. So for us, it was just watching, you know, things on TV. So we watched a lot of things on TV that were actually features that had been placed on television. And so for us, it was TV. So I'd seen the work of Anthony Quinn, of Jose Ferrer. I remember seeing Cyrano de Bergerac, which Jose Ferrer did it, I think, 1939. I had seen it on TV, and what a performance. I mean, I was stunned. One of the great heroes that I had was Jose, and along with Paul Muni, who I saw do some extraordinary work. And those were my idols, really. And they were the people who really pushed me through, you know. Oh yeah, nothing attacks the subconscious mind more than the audio-visual event. No book, no live performance, no painting, no artistry has ever been as powerful as the audio-visual event, especially when it's projected on the big screen. We're starting to realize, and we've known for a long time, that even watching it on the small screen, it's going in all the way. And meaning that it goes into your subconscious mind, and it stays there. It doesn't. It's not like you know, your conscious mind. You have values. You have a system of being able to say, well, that's right and that's wrong. But in the subconscious mind, it just gets stored. It's in there, and the only way you find out if you like it or don't like it is when it materializes itself through dreams or memory or something. It pops up again. And you go, well, that's not very good, but it's in there. And it's in there, and it has an effect. It's doing some work in there. You know, it's not like the brain isn't like one of the most extraordinary, you know, computer systems, if you want to call it. You know, it's the ultimate. And of course, the computers, the major computers of today are quicker, faster, and able to to give you information at a much quicker rate, in the trillions of bytes per second, when the brain is working billions. So it's a big difference. But the human brain is still an amazing, amazing machine, if you want to call it that. But Battlestar Galactica is the best usage of television I've ever been a part of, ever. And I've done some really wonderful pieces of work on television. And I'm not talking about, you know, I won't even mention shows. I'm not talking about episodic television. I'm talking about, you know, things like American Family, which was the very first Latino-themed program ever placed on broadcast television in the history of broadcast TV, ever. And it was a wonderful show, done for PBS. And it was excellent, but nothing, and we touched really important issues with that show, but nothing compared to the scope of what Battlestar did. Battlestar went to the root of humanity. It starts off with the whole understanding of technology wiping out the human species. That's the premise of the whole show. We build technology, the technology comes back to kill us. And it does a very good job. It leaves 49,001 people, human beings, left. So the human race is annihilated except for 49,000. And from there the show starts. And for the rest of the show, we're trying to find, from that moment on, we're trying to find a way to have the survival of the human race. And, you know, there's only one race, and that's what the show is really about. It's the human race, period. And everything other than that, I don't care what cultures were involved, because there were different planets that kind of like had their own cultures, you know, Sagittarian and Caprica, and, you know, went on and on. There was 12 of them, 12 different planets. But in essence, it really was a show about us as human beings. And so it held up an incredible mirror to the entire planet, not just to the United States, not just to English-speaking people. It transcended into becoming what was arguably the best usage of television in the history of TV. And that's not said by me, that's said by, you know, the Peabody. It's said by critics from around the world, who said once you started to understand the show and you saw it from the very beginning, from the pilot on, if you watched the pilot in episode 1, that was it. You had to see it in succession, and you had to see it, you know, as fast as you could. And especially once there more people are seeing it now on DVD and Blu-ray than had ever watched it when it was on television. It's just the best way to watch that show. It's just, you get your own pace, you do it whenever you want to, and you have all of them there, and you just like reading a great book. Some people, one young woman came up to me just about a month ago and said, I watched your show. I said, oh, great. She goes, yeah, it took me 4 days. She'd watched the entire 5 years, plus the 2 films that were made, in 4 days. That's a pretty strong commitment. That's a lot of hours. That's like you're averaging maybe about 17, 18 hours per day, maybe even more, you know, to get through all that material. Because it's 41 minutes. It's not a full hour per show. It's 41 minutes and 20 seconds per show. So, you know, but still, break it down. You know, even if she had really 4 seasons, but it was 5 seasons all with the pilot. So, and the extra shows. Pilot was 2 hours, and those 2 extra shows were, you know, at least another 4 hours. So it's about 6 hours. So it's 4.5 at least hours. I mean, it was 88 hours altogether. I can't tell you how incredible that character has become for the Latino culture. Guillermo Adama, William Adama, you know, Husker. Adama, I don't think they wrote it intending it to be a Latin character in any way. But Adama, when you pronounce it correctly, it's Adama. It's very Latin. And when I'll never forget the phone call I received from a very close and dear friend. She's a brilliant writer. And she called me and said, my nephew, she was crying on the phone. And I said, what's the matter? She goes, my nephew just called. And he's 12 years old. And he was so excited. He just couldn't. He's just kept on saying, we're in the future. We're in the future. I saw it. You know, I saw Battlestar, and we're in the future. He wasn't joking. A 12-year-old little kid, you know, watching something, he says, oh my God, he's one of us, meaning of the cultural. And he saw that our culture was there and represented in a very distinct way. I mean, Admiral Adama was the lead of the show, so it was a very important position. And in the show and the story was even more so, let alone what it meant as far as it representing a character in television history. But what it meant culturally is unprecedented. There's never been, ever, a character of that caliber ever devised in the history of television. That's the first time that a Latino has been placed in that position, ever. You know, it's like when the African-American experience finally got to be shown, and now they represent about 17% of the images we see on television and motion pictures are African-American. That's really good, okay? Latinos are less than 2%. All images on television and motion picture, less than 2% are Latino. Now we handle, they say 16, but I'm pretty close. I'm pretty sure we're closer to 20% of the population. About 1 out of every 5 people in this country is Latin-based, okay, culturally. So with that being said, to be less than 2% of the images that you see, there's something drastically wrong. That's one of the reasons why we say there should be more understanding of the cultural diversity that makes this country so powerful and so great in our arts, especially in film and television. We're getting, like I said, a balance with the African American, but the indigenous, the Asian American, and the Latino are very, very, they don't even exist in this culture of television and motion picture. And if they do, they exist in a very minor way. There's a handful. They've tried, but they've fallen prey to their own lack of understanding. So much so that we've had those memorable years of, the great white year of 1999 when there wasn't one person of color on any show in all of television, cable and everything. It was the great white year. And there's nothing wrong with white. It's a great color. It's a great culture. European cultures are fantastic. They've done so much for the planet. But so have Asians, and so have Africans, and so have, indigenous, and so have, Latinos. But we're not represented. We, meaning everybody other than the European culture, in the art forms is misrepresented. Misrepresented, not underrepresented, but misrepresented.
Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, because basically they stereotype you. And stereotypes are like the worst. I mean, how to kill a culture, just what are we doing right now to Iranians and to Middle Easterners? I mean, we're destroying them. They're the bad guys. They were the Colombians and the Latinos all through Miami Vice. Nobody was worse than the Asians and the Latinos held a premier position. Latinos were like, we were killing Colombians and the drug lords and all of them. They were all Latin and or Asian. There was no two ways around it. That was it. And the bad people, Latin or Asian. That's it. All through one of the most extraordinary periods of television. I mean, Miami Vice was very well received. But you go back there and you try to find people that were not Latino or not Asian and that were bad, woo, you can count them on one hand. I have a responsibility to myself and my family. But what is my family? I got the family of my children and my grandchildren, and you also have the family of humankind. So, yeah, I kind of take on that understanding. And there have been times when I haven't done things, and I'm probably best known for the things that I haven't done than the things that I've done. And that's cool, and I understand that, and I'm very proud of it. But in many ways, it's okay. It's okay because, I have a lot of my own. I'm doing Dexter right now, and it's as people see it's pretty dark. It's probably the darkest season that Dexter's ever had, and Dexter's pretty dark. It's been dark from the beginning. The conceptual understanding of a serial killer that kills serial killers is a bit much, because all you're doing is watching people get killed in the strangest way. So, what a show. I'm proud of my culture. I'm proud of being American. I'm proud of being a human being. And to the day that I die, I think on my epitaph, I'd like people to remember me as a person who really believed that there was only one race, and that's the human race, period. There's no Latin race or Anglo race or Caucasian race or, Asian, African, none of the indigenous, no. Those are not races, those are cultures. Inside of that, there's only one race, and that holds us all together. It's a unifying word, and that is, to me, the key. So if I'm a hero, it's because I've stayed pretty true to that understanding. And I hope that everybody gets on the bandwagon. I'm not the first one to say it, and I'm not going to be the last one to say it. But I have said it a lot, and I'm pretty much, known for that. And I will continue to do it till the day I die, because basically my children's children's children don't have a chance, because there's a lot of Latinos in this country and in this planet. And a lot of people don't really think that we belong here, you know, and it's become very difficult. And the immigration of people has been consistent since we were the existence of humankind. We've migrated, and then immigration became, from migration we became immigrant. And, but I would say that it's the only natural thing we ever do is migrate. We move from, if the water's over there and we're over here and we need the water, we're going to walk over there and get the water. And that's the basis, the fundamental of survival, period. So the first world has to be very aware of the third world when they're living right next door to each other. That the third world is going to say, the water's over there, let's go get the water. And, you know, that's what they did when they came in and populated this hemisphere. They said, we need the water, so there's some over there, let's go get it. And they'd go over and get it. And that's how this, I mean, I guess the human species has been here for a little over 40,000 years on this hemisphere. And yet the human species has been populated on this planet for millions of years. Our genetic structure has been 7.5 million years old and sediment that is old. Our DNA was found in you know, bones that were here 7.5 million years ago. Now, we didn't look like we look now, but we've evolved to this level. So I will say that, okay, we're 40,000, and I guess Homo erectus has been around for a couple 100,000 years. So we migrated here. And the immigrants that came across then are still coming. And we can't take it. We just think that it's now, you've got to shut the door. And, you know, there's a limit to everything, and we need to place those limits in high gear. And the whole understanding of Latinos coming across the border and doing it illegally and not having their papers is not the way that life is and should be. And yet every single one of the parents, of the grandparents, of the great-great-great-grandparents of those people that are here that are not of the Cherokee Nation or that are not of the indigenous nations that were here thousands of years ago are immigrants, and they came here illegally, right. All of them. And they took over, and the European did a tremendously difficult thing of destroying human life to continue to move forward. And so, but those are things that we don't want to put in the back burner. It's like the Africans. How'd the Africans get here? Well, a lot of them came across before the advent of slavery, but the majority, millions upon millions, came here because of slavery trade. We're moving at a rate, Latino is moving at a rate of growth that is disproportionate to any other group, a much faster rate. So therefore, when one culture is just out of birth alone, is outdoing other cultures, the other cultures take notice and know that inevitably they will be overrun by the other culture. And what does that mean? You know? And in many ways, they're afraid of that because they know nothing about us. You got to remember, until we have established a sense of balance of the contributions of the cultural dynamic that has made this country great, and we have, you know, if it wasn't for Martin Luther King, there wouldn't be one person of color that we celebrate in this country as a nation, where we say thank you to Martin Luther King, thank you to, you know, Thomas Jefferson, thank you to Abraham Lincoln, thank you to George Washington. A lot of Europeans get their calling, but only one person of color has ever gotten the respect of the entire nation to say to the, once a year for 5 minutes at least, thank you for what you've done for this country. Now, we're the Asians who were here before even the indigenous people were here. They created the indigenous people, which they themselves can't take. The Arapaho, the Cheyenne, their mythology does not have them coming from outside of this hemisphere. When the Almighty, you know, created the Deer Clan and the river and the tree and the Bear Clan, it created humankind here, not in, you know, in Mediterranean, but here. And so the Apache, the Cheyenne, their mythology is pretty solid, and it has nothing to do with anything outside of this hemisphere in this part of the world. They started here as far as they're concerned. And that's very difficult for people to say, well, actually, you're Asian descent. That's a white man's theory to them. And that's really sad because that isn't inclusive into understanding that we all come from Africa. And that means that everybody should be very grateful for the motherland, and that Africa is the first distinct, cultural dynamic of our existence. And it was not, we weren't, Asian first or, European. We didn't come from Switzerland, or Germany. We didn't come from Latin America. No, we came from Africa first. So all of our root goes back to Africa. So let's start there and say thank you to our African root that made it possible for all of us to be here. But we don't do that. We look at our African roots and say, I'm not African. I have no African in me. Are you kidding? I'm from, England, or, I'm Irish, or, I'm Mexican. I'm not African, or I'm Cherokee, not African. The central message that I really, talk to people about is that if you have self-esteem, self-respect, and self-worth, you don't get into harm's way. You like yourself. Therefore, you don't want anything to happen to yourself. And therefore, you don't cause anybody any harm. When you don't have self-esteem, self-respect, and self-worth, then you get into harm's way. You start looking for trouble, and you don't mind causing harm. So if you want to stop violence, then infuse the children when they're 1, 2, 3, 4 years old, not by the parents only, but by the community that they live in, that they are worth something. And, it takes an entire village to raise a child, remember? And so that's what I infuse more than anything. Give self-esteem, self-respect, and self-worth to the human species, and you will get the finest understanding of that, the power of that person, in whatever culture and whatever situation it is. And that's the key. American Family, written by Gregory Nava, and did an extraordinary job of understanding the simplicity of, what the American family of Latin descent is, a little inkling of it, what it is, And so what it did is it allowed broadcast television to place on its channel a look at a slice of Americans of Latin descent here in the United States. And it's that simple. I mean, we had other shows, but they've all been cable. That's limited in respects of that you have to buy the cable, and a lot of people can't afford to buy television. And so they still resort to broadcast TV, which is free, and you can get it anywhere in the United States. And it's getting a little harder now because I don't see too many antennas up on roofs anymore, so it's getting a little harder. But broadcast television is free for everyone. And on broadcast television, which is still the national feed, and seen more than any other type of television, I will say that it was a needed understanding. And what the programming is on that was brought about by public broadcasting. PBS is the mother of really invention of the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, of all those channels. Most of the stuff was invented by public broadcasting. They're the educational system of the planet. They really have taken, themselves very seriously and done an incredible job of, bringing about innovative ways to use the, the art form of television. So when they allowed, it was really interesting because we were canceled at the height of the program, the second season when we won the Emmy nomination for Best Series. We were canceled by the Bush administration because we would not. It came out in the press. It was really quite interesting. It was censorship at the highest level. And what they did is they shut us down because of the usage of the Iraq War and how we, as the theme of the season was my son, who we had put through sacrifice, the entire family had sacrificed for him to go to medical school and became a doctor, goes off to war. As soon as the Iraq War started, 9/11 hit, and then the Iraq War started. He went from being a doctor in public life, private life, to joining the army, and he goes off to fight and help in the war. And the full 13 episodes dealt with that portion of the war and what was happening in the United States, and they didn't like the leftist kind of politic that they felt was being observed, and yet my character was pro. I mean, I was Archie Bunker. I'm the most right-wing conservative Latino that's ever been placed on television in the history of TV, and he was fantastic. Of course, what happens at the end, of course, they kill my son in the war, and I lose my son, and we lose everything, and our family just shattered. And they didn't like that theme. That was the thing they didn't like, that I had to deal with the death of my son and what it did to me. So they wanted it off the air, and they told us, either you take out that portion or we will not refund you. And that was set down by the administration of the United States of America. This is, which project makes me most proud? It's like asking me which one of my 6 children do I like the best. It's got to be really difficult to do that. I've been very fortunate in that I've been able to do things that are outside of my culture and inside my culture. I've been able to represent the positive and the negative of human existence. And I've been able to use the medium and create in the medium as an actor, as a producer, as a writer, as a director. And it's a privilege to be in this medium. Telling stories, my God, we're storytellers, and that's all we do is go around looking for stories and tell them. And people are appreciative, and we make a living doing this. And I've been very fortunate. I've been doing this for over 4 decades, and I'm very grateful. And so, I mean, I would have to say that the most explosive piece of work I've ever done has been BATTLESTAR. It went all the way to the United Nations. If you go online, just put BATTLESTAR in the UN, you'll see what happened at the United Nations, which was quite impressive. I wasn't trying to say anything. I said what I had to say, and that there's only one race, the human race. And inside of the human race, there are cultures, and those cultures are incredible, but they're all part of one race, and that there's only one race. And I said it, and it did have an impact, a big impact. And people cheered, because it is the truth. It's a truth that has to permeate our existence as human beings. We have to stop looking at, at the other by way of religion or culture, and start unifying ourselves as a human body. And we do that through the usage of the word race. We use it right now as a divisive word. It divides us. There's the African race, the Caucasian race, the indigenous, the Asian, and the Latino. And we're very specific. And the reason that we started doing that over 600 years ago was so it'd be easier for one culture to kill another culture. That was the whole idea. Because you didn't want to kill your own race, so you said, that's a different race than us. Kill them! And they did a good job. Yeah, I think that TV is probably the biggest communicator. Again, the audiovisual event is the strongest event that we have, because it encompasses all the art forms. There's written word, production, art design, everything. Movement, God almighty. And it all the different disciplines come together to create the story possibilities. So basically, television, which is the most accessible, because it's free, you pay for the TV, and you get it, and you put it in your house, and then from that moment on, it's free for you, unless you want to go cable, but just free. And it's been free since we were given that, and the reason it's free is because they run commercials on it, and they're trying to sell you stuff. They don't mind giving you the free access as long as you have to watch their commercials, and they sell you popcorn and do whatever, soap or whatever. But in essence, that medium is the strongest, way of understanding that we have. More people get their information from the TV than from the newspaper or even the internet. So now the internet is another facet of the audiovisual event. But it's still, and I'd be interested to see the difference between people who use the computer to actually read versus those that use the computer to either play games or watch, YouTube.